Um, yeah, so I'm going to try to do everything with the mouse and not use too many keyboard shortcuts just so everyone can see. I also kind of deliberately don't have a keyboard connected to this. I'll use musical typing, the keyboard that sort of comes with Logic that allows me to type on my computer keyboard and use it as a MIDI keyboard, and it's just so everyone can see what's going on. However, sometimes I forget and I start using shortcuts. So make sure you ask me what I did if you miss it, and back me up, and I'll go back to it again. Okay. Are the internet issues bad? Oh man, this is embarrassing. Okay, let's start by sharing the screen, and we'll take this easy. Make sure I share sound. We'll go to my session here. Make the output zoom. Okay, everyone still hears me okay, I hope, and you can see the screen. Cool. Cool. All right. So this is just a little house tune that I've been dabbling with, mostly for classes that I'm teaching. So maybe where I wanted to start is the often misunderstood or yeah, often sort of missed difference between things like track stacks, VCAs, and groups and things like that in Logic, because there's so many ways to group things together, and so the differences sometimes get lost. In the session here, I've got a bunch of drum tracks, like up to here is drum tracks, and by the way, the numbering starts at 17 because I've got a ton of hidden tracks. You MIDI, some synthy things, things that they treat all these drums together. There's a few options that Logic provides. Firstly, I could select all of the tracks, and I'm just pressing Shift here to do that. So Shift, select like that, and I could go right-click and create a track stack. So I'm sure you all know this, but let's just follow on along anyway. So there's two types of track stacks. You can have the summing tracks and stacks and folder stacks, and it kind of tells you what each is about. But summing stack is probably what you expect to be able to do when you subgroup things, generally speaking. So if I create a summing stack like that, it creates a nice little breakdown folder thing, and I can rename this and call this drums, perhaps. Be a good name. And if I go to my mixer just by pressing X, I can see again that that the mixer view has been collapsed as well, and there is a little chevron here, a little triangle, and I can click on that, it unfolds it all, or I can fold it back up. And so you'll notice that this has created a master auxiliary input, so we can see that all the outputs of the tracks, individual tracks, are assigned to this free bus 6, automatically. I didn't have a say in that. And then the input of this aux track is a stereo aux is assigned to bus 6 as well, and then the aux track goes out to stereo master. You'll notice that this has effects plugins on it, so you can do processing that will affect all of the tracks within that stack. So a basic subgroup that gives you the ability to EQ, put any kind of processing on it, send it to other places as a group, and of course vary the level of that entire track. So if I turn it down, I think it's just the bass that'll play now. Oh, there's a few chords there. All right, So as expected. So that's probably the most useful way of creating groups or subgroups. Within this group, you can create further subgroups, so you can nest things within groups. It gets pretty hairy if you do too much of that, and there's overlap between tracks. Say like if I added these, pressing shift again, these tracks to one subgroup and then these tracks would lead to another subgroup, then these two wouldn't know what to do, and it becomes really confusing. And so, you got to be a little bit careful. But nonetheless, there's the other thing that Logic allows you to do is to create a folder stack. So I'm going to flatten the stack or undo it essentially. Take the master off, and this time I'm going to create a track stack as well. Again, Shift Command D, but this time I'm going to make it a folder stack. So if I make it a folder stack, the view is essentially the same. I'm going to call this drums again once more. And yeah, I can break it down. I can see it all, go to mixer, same thing. But the thing you notice is that it doesn't have any more ability to put any kind of processing on this master. It just becomes a master volume controller for the group without the ability to process things together. So this is ultimately a VCA group, but the Logic doesn't call it that at this point. It's just a
Do
folder.
you just want to explain what a VCA is?
I'm going to get to it next.
Okay.
Yeah. And so yeah, essentially it's just a volume, because that's all you get. So it's really useful for tidying sessions up, to making sessions look a bit more manageable, and perhaps when you know that you're not going to be processing things together. I don't know, it could be maybe for like I don't know, if it's an orchestra, the whole violin section could go into one track stack and all the brass can go into another or something, and you rarely process it all together. Perhaps maybe that's an application. And there's possibly others, like if you're doing any kind of dialogue editing and you've got multiple tracks of Foley and things like that you don't necessarily want to treat together through processing, but you do want them grouped together as a group. So that's the other kind of track stack. I'm going to flatten this again, and this time I'll talk a little bit about the actual groups that are in here. So there's a window, there's a little space in the mixer window between output and automation modes that just says groups or group, and this grouping is slightly different. So say these three bongos, I've got these three bongos here, and I group them together. I just click on the thing and assign it to group 1, and now these three things have been added to group 1, so they're part of the group. And to know what it is that this group actually means, over here in the inspector you can break down. A new thing popped up, by the way. Tells you these are the things that are grouped together: volume, mute, and track automation mode. So currently, if I just hit without multiple selection or any kind of shift holding, I'll mute 1, all 3 mute. And if I turn the volume up and down, it maintains the ratio between those tracks, the original ratio between those volumes, but lets me adjust the volume for all 3, or fader for all 3 channels together. I think the power of this is really visual, like you can see volume faders go up and down, and it's the editing. So currently editing is not selected. So if I go to my bongo tracks, which are right there, if I make a selection using my marquee tool, for example, I'll just go select my marquee tool and make a selection like that, I'm able to select only one track, or edit only one track. However, if I press editing on, now these 3 things are going to be ganged together. So if I'm doing any kind of multi-track work where the tracks are related to one another somehow, think a drum recording or something like that, then you can quickly edit multiple tracks all at the same time, making the same cuts, getting rid of silence, doing quick fades, things like that. Super easy. So this is the power of this type of grouping. The other type of group is the VCA group that we haven't yet talked about, and to be honest, I don't use it very much because the track stack is so handy to have that I just don't find much of a need for it. Also, by the way, if you wanted to suspend this group, it's Command G. Oh, Shift G. I beg your pardon. Shift G. and then it pauses that group for a minute. Yeah, so VCA tracks are essentially bus extensions, just like if you had an auxiliary track going in here. You can create them uh, um, by pressing the little plus button somewhere up now. Ugh, where is it? My Zoom screen's covering it. Oh, I don't know where it got to. Anyway, you can create a new send. There it is. Create new. There's usually a plus button where this undo thing is, but I don't see it now. Maybe it's the new update. I just updated it to 10.8.1 and things have changed a little bit. Anyway, so you can make a new VCA channel strip. You can select multiple tracks like so. Say just these, for example, and create VCA. And so this creates a very sort of nondescript track here called this VCA2. You can obviously rename it. And it's just like the master fader for that folder stack, where all you get is volume control for it. VCA stands for voltage controlled amplifier, and rather than using rather than adjusting the level or fader of each track individually, it sends out sort of obviously in a virtual environment like a pretend voltage to adjust the faders of individual tracks that are under its master control. It comes from the hardware analog console days, where there was an actual voltage controlled amplifier on every fader, and fader would adjust the gain of that voltage controlled amplifier rather than the normal, like a resistor that increases resistance as you turn the volume down, you know. And that way you can have sort of this a meta layer of control over multiple tracks and faders with one master fader. Michael's asking if there's any advantage of a folder stack over a summing stack. To be honest, not really. I think summing stack may be slightly more CPU intensive, maybe takes up a bit more CPU resources. But if you know that all you want to do is tidy things up, tidy up the session, and be able to control submix volumes, and that's about it, then I'd probably go with folder stacks. But if you're not sure, and maybe you in the future you might want to put some type of processing on it, then I think it's safest to go with the summing stacks.
Can I just add something in there as well?
Please.
With the so the summing stack is kind of like, yeah, like you're saying, like a sort of subgroup. So like everything from that you put into it then flows through that that track. Whereas like a folder stack, like each of those individual things are still going out to the stereo bus of their own accord. So they're not actually being all processed together. You're just got that kind of VCA type thing on that folder. And then with the VCA as opposed to a folder, it might be more that you like have decided that this BV and this synth you want to turn up and down together. So you might have them on a VCA because you're not necessarily going to put them in a folder together. So that would maybe be like some of the reasons that you'd use those all differently. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also, it's a really good point, Emily, and also those tracks that you decide to gang together in terms of their volume, they might not be adjacent tracks, you know, they might not be next to each other in the mixer. So if they're far away from each other, it's like you just click this one, and this one, add VCA to it, and you've got control over all of them at the same time. If you have complex routing setup, a question from Neil, on a heap of faders, then put it in track stack. Yeah, so so that's a good question. It's kind of a complicated question. I don't really want to do a cop-out answer and say depends, but it does kind of depend. You can try it. It behaves in a way that most people would want it to behave. So it does route them all to the master, but it tries to maintain routing. So as long as you don't overlap, as long as you don't add one track to two groups, you're safe. If you do that, then I don't actually know what happens. I haven't messed that up in a little while.
And the example would be like you've got your two kick mics that go into a kick bus, and then that kick bus goes to your drums bus. Like,
Mm,
as long as you're making sure that those kick mics are still going
yeah,
to the kick bus and only the kick bus is going
yeah,
to the drum bus, then it
yeah,
should all flow
yeah, yeah.
properly.
But if you added one of those kick mics to kick channels to one group and another to another group, and then you gang those two together, then I don't know what logic how it would handle it. I think the easy part of it is that you can see the inputs and outputs fairly, obviously. So if it does something funny, you can just do it manually and reassign the buses the way you like them to be. Okay, so that's just a little bit of grouping chat and sort of organizational things. I'm going to actually exit this session and share another one with you. Um, Bear with, close project, start a new one.
Yes, it was really interesting for me actually. I work in Pro Tools primarily,
Yeah,
and then the first time I recorded in Logic, like a full band in Logic, learning about how to connect all that grouping stuff together was like an absolute life changer, eh? In
right, right.
terms of doing your comping in bits and pieces, it's like
Yeah, right.
just makes your life so much easier when you can get into that menu and really get nitty gritty with it.
Yeah, Pro Tools groups are pretty handy as well. Yes, they're fairly
Yeah.
easy to use, and from what I remember at least.
Yeah, it's
Um,
all the same. It's
yeah,
all the
cool.
same now anyway.
Yeah, isn't yeah, I mean they just try to do things slightly differently, but there's only
Totally.
so many things you ever want to do.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, what I've got here is I'm just going to make sure the audio settings carry over. Yes, they do. Excellent. I just started a new session. I imported this Āmio break into here. I know it's quite loud, so let me just turn it down a little bit. It's at 165 BPM, and so is the sample. So if I go Command U, then it creates a cycle that's the same length as the region. So if I hit play now, you will hear the beat up hold end sample. Here it is. Cool. Um, Lovely. Now, Logic has added a new tool this release called the slip tool, and I didn't really think much of it. I was like, what is this for? But then I've been playing with it, and I just realized how powerful it can be for drum editing. So in the tools menu, and by the way I've got Logic set up, maybe that's worth talking about. The way I have my Logic set up is if I go to my settings here. Can you guys see the settings, or do I need to share that screen separately? Not cool. If I go to editing, I always make sure that fade tool click zones and marquee tool click zones is selected. If these two things are selected, it means that depending on where I am in the region, the tool changes, right? So I'm at the top, it's pointer. I'm at the bottom, it's marquee tool. I can make quick selections, cut things out, really, really quick to edit things. And also if I'm at the edge, top edge, it does fade ins and fade outs, just like that, right? So it's really handy if you do any amount of editing to be able to do that really quickly without having to change your tools. Anyhow, my secondary tool is currently marquee tool, but if I go down and make it scissor tool, when I hold down command, it becomes scissor, so I can, cut up this thing. And now I've got multiple regions. I did it sort of randomly, so let me undo that. The power of the scissor tool really is in its secondary function. So currently I've got command held down. If I press option, you can see a little plus thing pops out, and if you click on it and make the cut, it makes equal division cuts. So now it's cut up this 2-bar loop into 8 slices, right? So those 8 slices are now separate, and I can treat them separately. I can do fades and move them around and so on. Once that's happened, I can just zoom in a little bit, so we've got a bit more real estate to look at. Now I can go down here and select the slip tool. Slip tool is, you'll see what it is. It takes the region and keeps its length static, but it moves the content inside the region. right? It slips the content around. Now this content will run out. That's the beginning of that file, of that region, and that's the end of the region, and it just kind of stops there, right? When I do that, it stops there. I'll undo that. The other new tool is the rotate tool, and rotate tool just keeps making it go round and round, right? Like it Pac-Mans it. Whatever goes off screen on the left shows up on the screen on the right, right? So it turns it around. But I find slip tool a bit more friendlier to use. So let me redo that. So now, if I was to select my snap mode and change it from smart to beat, now whenever I move anything, slip anything, it'll always move it in the increment of beats rather than sort of freely slipping it around and perhaps getting us in trouble in terms of timing. So if I select my slip tool and I move things about, kind of indiscriminately like that, just kind of doing random crap here, to be honest with you, and do something. Now we've like re-edited this drum beat, but kept things in time. So God knows what's going to happen when I hit play. Apologies in advance, but here we go. Right, so it's like a different thing, and we can move it about a little bit more and find something interesting. Right, and so really quickly you can get pretty intricate things happening here. So let me undo a bunch of that until we get the same region whole again. I'll go back to smart mode for my cutting. So obviously you can make a cut that's even finer in resolution. So I'll make a cut here. So now there's 16 of these things. Go back to beat division, go to my slip tool and start doing the same thing. I'll preserve the spot for the snare hits, but of course I've got everything selected, but I'll change the position of these things once again quite randomly. That one's that, and this one's this now, and this one's now that. So you get the point, and you get the power of the thing that reasonably randomly I'm guaranteed to have things that are in time and possibly, God willing, interesting. So you can do this to audio, you can do this to MIDI as well. So it works on MIDI tracks. You can slip MIDI information as well. And I suppose interestingly, if you've got a spot in your production, in your track, and so I don't know, it's like the pre-chorus bit or something, and you've got a large file that you want to use a sample out of, but you're not really sure what part you want, it's so easy to stick that region in its place, define its beginning and end, its duration, and then slip through the audio and audition new parts that might be somehow interesting or inspiring or fitting to the thing. So I thought it's such a great addition. At first I really didn't pay much attention to it, but then drum editing really brought it to its brought out its use to me. Yeah, let's see if we can do something to a MIDI track. So this is a MIDI track now, and it's particularly sparsely populated one. But if I went and chose rotate, so if I move it now, this first note here is going to pop up on this side, right? Because I'm rotating it like this. And so you can just kind of make it keep going round and round. And it's really easy to change sort of the rhythmic feel of things like bass lines or even like rhythm elements, non-drum rhythm elements, and just to try things, rather than what would you have to do? You'd have to increase the length of the region, go in there and the piano roll or some kind of editor, copy everything, paste it slightly later, and it takes many steps to achieve the same thing. So a really cool trick, I thought, and worth showing. It's another under the radar type of update, that people don't talk about. Okay. Let's stick with this session here. I'm going to delete this end break thing, and I'm going to delete this thing as well and create a new software instrument. and maybe we can make some kind of a guitar-y sound happen. Acoustic guitar, why not? We'll stick this acoustic guitar preset on it. So this is a sampler track, and the sampler track will play something that I'm pretty sure is going to sound reasonably naff. That's not too bad. Oh, a ton of reverb. All right, so we've got this guitar track on it. If you ever tried to program anything to play guitar, like a fake guitar sound, you know that it never quite sounds right? Like you need to do kind of a lot of work in terms of making sure the voicing is correct and just choosing a random BPM here. So like if you play this kind of close clustered chord on a guitar, it doesn't sound right. That's like a piano chord, right? You couldn't play those notes on a guitar at the same time because you'd have to press more than one fret at a time to achieve that. So you got to get the voicings right. The picking is never quite natural. Strumming is never quite natural. You need to do a lot of work to make a strum sound like a physical pick raking across the strings, and it takes a bit of time to do. One of the underrated MIDI effects that Logic has, and I do want to talk about a lot more of these MIDI effects, but one of the cool ones that I guess intimidates people, including myself, is the scripter. The scripter is a JavaScript-like language that allows you to write your own MIDI plugins. So who knows how to do that? I mean, I certainly don't. I'm power to those people who can. So usually you open it, you go, programming, I'm out, and close it. But it's actually got a bunch of really interesting presets here, and Guitar Strummer is one of them. So if you bring up the Guitar Strummer preset, it's got some controls, very sort of ugly looking set set on this gray background control, so no GUI really. There's two types of things you can do with the sound. You can strum or you can arpeggiate. And so right now we're on strum, and if I bring up musical typing again, just by pressing one key, it plays a guitar strum, right? It plays a chord. The chord, by the way, is determined by these menus here. But you can hear that every press generates slightly different velocity, making it, you know, a bit more natural and not that machine gun type of same sound, which is actually quite nice and quite usable. If I try to play a chord, you can probably hear it. It's muting all the notes. It only plays the first note that I hit on my keyboard and mutes all the other ones. It's monophonic, right? So it wants you to play one note at a time. And strumming's cool, like that's something, but another cool thing it can do is this arpeggio thing. And now we're really getting something actually quite interesting. I'm just holding down one note, one key here, right? The H on the keyboard, you can see. And just like that, we get fairly natural sounding arpeggio here from a fake guitar. The arpeggio controls are here. You can do up and down. You can sort of alternate. You can follow the beat division. There's a timing control here as well. There's some randomness that you can introduce. It's got 10% of like timing randomness, so it doesn't play, again, robot-like exactly the same every time. So there's a velocity curve, a little randomizer for velocity as well. And so you can play these arpeggios, yeah, nice and easy. Now the new addition to Logic, I'll just exit that, but I'm still in there. The new addition to Logic is also the ability to record what comes out of MIDI effects. So back in the day, you would just have to, you know, program these things. Maybe we can record it. Here, I'll just hit record. Oop, I messed that up. Do that again. And so in the piano roll, there's only these 3 notes, horribly out of time, quantize. It's so out of time, it doesn't even oh, no, I don't have the selection here. You can quantize and, you get this 1 note and it's fine, but you don't have control over all the other notes that it plays, right? Just get this main thing and that's that. So let me undo that recording. Now there's this new feature that you can record the output of the MIDI effects. If I click underneath this MIDI effect and create and tick record MIDI on to track, this little triangle thing pops up either side of the preset and the plugin. And now if I hit record, now I get the actual notes, right? The actual notes are here. So if I wanted to control, specific velocities, fix up little performance errors or something, it's all in there, like full MIDI information. So that's really, really useful, and it's been a long time coming. It also means we can record arpeggiator outputs. So I'm gonna disable this scripter for a second. No plugin, put an arpeggiator on, and this time play a little chord or something. Try to reach over my mic. Right, so if I wrote that chord in or played that chord in, then go record. I get the actual arpeggios, not the actual thing that I played, which was 1 held down chord. I get the actual notes. So really, really useful, and yeah, it's just been such a long time. What you used to have to do is this arpeggiator has this button here, which is grayed out currently when the arpeggiator is not in playback. But if you hit play and play some music, I'll just hit latch and play. Then you could drag this onto the track. Oops, that's the wrong one, sorry. This one here. And that would give you only 1 repeat of that arpeggio. But now you can actually record the performance, right? Like whatever you play through the arpeggiator, each note comes out in your MIDI editor. Very cool. Okay, so get rid of that. Now, while I'm on the topic of MIDI effects, there are a few really interesting ones here, and especially if music theory is not your strongest suit. It certainly isn't mine. I can go and do a few things to prepare the session for correct musical intervals and harmonies to be played, and then it sort of takes over and allows you to do just about anything without making mistakes. So I'm going to set the session to A minor, so session key is going to be A minor. And if I go, I don't know about this guitar sound, let me actually choose something else. Let me choose some kind of a keyboard thing. What does that sound like? Oh, no, God. That'll do. Okay. So yeah, I've set my key signature, and in MIDI effects there's a thing called the chord trigger, and this chord trigger has various modes. By default it's in the single mode, which means that when you play a note it automatically plays a chord down here. I don't know why it's that chord. We can make it learn and say this note is going to be this, and now now it plays those minor chords like I just told it to do. There's also a multi-mode where different keys can be assigned to different chords. You need to keep that clear in your head before you do that and make some kind of a map for it. But yeah, you can do those things. And additionally, there are once again really interesting presets here. So under multi, there are these voicings: guitar voicing, keyboard voicing, parallel chords, and so on. So by default, it plays all the intervals in parallel, right? So even if I was to go and choose C major here, just so it's nice and obvious, C major, we're in this chord mode. Let me make it play a major chord. This guy's gonna be this, not that. Now it'll play a major chord when I play C and D and E. And you can hear that it's playing out of scale notes. It's just moving everything in parallel. All the intervals get moved up the same way, so it doesn't actually play C major scale. It just plays some other weird, whatever the interval determines that chord to be. Okay, well that's all right. But if I choose, if I choose from the presets something like a keyboard voicing, let's keep this simple. Make it like pop music, right hand, like that. It creates a key map over these 2 octaves, and now see, all of a sudden it plays like a little funky little chord here with this added second here. Okay, so still not every chord is in the scale of A minor, but we can add a transposer underneath it. So if I add a transposer allows me to set my key. So I'm going to make it A, and I'm going to make it natural minor, like that. And now everything's going to be transposed. I also don't like how high in the register that sound is, so I'm going to transpose it down an octave, like so. And I'm still playing my keys up here. And it wraps it back around. Okay, cool. Well, what if we ganged this with an arpeggiator? What if I also put an arpeggiator on top of this? Logic Arpeggiator is very powerful and very nice to use. I encourage you to check out how it works. I'm going to go into grid mode here and choose a pattern, maybe this one. And so now if I play a key, so right there, I've made like a little chord progression with a kind of a melody that accompanies it by playing one note at a time. Once again, for you out there that are skilled in playing the piano and know all about music theory, this is probably very unimpressive, but it's pretty useful for those of us who struggle with that stuff. So I can make this chord thing appear on the 7th step here, so then it'll play the whole chord there. You can adjust the velocity of all those things and so on. Very cool. I think that ability to gang these things together is kind of where the power comes from. And once again, I can create a record after this point here and go to the beginning of my region and do a quick record. Of course, I messed it up and played it too late, but you get the picture, right? So we get this entire melody in our piano roll with different velocities, the whole thing. Okay, cool. Let me undo all of these, and final MIDI thing that I want to show you is something that, again, Logic does such a good job of hiding. Like, why is it so occluded and why is it not advertised more? If I choose one of the drum kits that come with Logic, it doesn't really matter which one, say this Neo Soul one. and close this thing. The channel obviously changes. The drum kit instrument is here, which you can use to edit the individual drum sounds, etc. But in our MIDI region, there are a number of sounds from C1, being the kick drum, to about C3. I think, yeah, that's the last. This B2 is the last note, and then from then on it's just about nothing. There's a click track up here somewhere, or kind of a click clavy thing, just sticks for count-ins, but it's pretty much empty up there. And so the sounds that you get are fine, whatever, however you feel about it, it's all good. But the scripter unlocks this hidden feature in the drum tracks or drum kit tracks called drum kit designer embellishments. And so if you open these embellishments, then you get to tell it at which octave you want these things to start appearing. So you get this crash crescendo and snare rolls, sort of smaller and shorter and longer ones. The snare shuffles and flams and brushing and all these other kinds of sounds that weren't there before. Remember, this was the last sound. All of a sudden we get new sounds here from C3 onwards. This little double hit, phlegm, these little rolls, quieter and louder ones. You get this nice crash crescendo, which I really like. It'll take ages to program, and it sounds like an articulation, right? It sounds like it's like someone played this, so it's a real sample. Yeah, so all these articulations are hidden in the scripter for some weird reason, and then you get to choose which note you want to do what, and there's more options like toms and drags and yeah, other things. So yeah, very natural sounding things, and that works across all drum kits, but they're different sounds, they're different samples.
That's such a cool little thing to make it sound natural. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, why is it not on forever for everything? Like, it's an insane thing to hide. Like, why do you hide this? Like,
Oh, for
it's
sure.
such a useful thing, and it's like it's there, but it doesn't show you that it's there. It's so weird. I don't know why. But yeah, under scripter too, under like one of the least used effects in the whole program, they hid it in
Yeah.
there. So
Sounds like an argument in the programming team to
well
me.
done, Apple. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's some scripter stuff. Drum embellishments, guitar picking. There's another harp thing that's actually kind of cool. If we, it's probably not worth the time, but I enjoyed for some reason. If we pick like a harp sound, um, like somewhere there's got to be a reasonably authentic harp. Okay, cool. So that's definitely a harp. But like to program a harp player's articulation, the way it's played, way that it accelerates and decelerates, way the player usually makes that accelerando and decelerando is really difficult and probably not worth the time. Once again, Scripter to the rescue. Scripter has a specific set preset for a harp called a harpeggiator, and the harpeggiator will do this. Let's go down an octave here, that's pretty high. And so if you play a chord, so cool. I just enjoy doing it. I just enjoy playing random chords with this acceleration deceleration control, and like playing with these settings a little bit to make things sound slightly wonky and interesting. So once again, like hidden in this thing, harp is one of the instruments I would never choose to do anything with, because it never sounds either natural like a harp or really like anything that I'd ever want to use. But this thing unlocks it, so we can speed it up a lot more. And yeah.
And also you could like use it on a different sound too, technically.
Oh
So
yeah,
have all
absolutely.
of the fun with that.
That's right. So nice. So yeah, it made me realize I really like harp sounds, and it's not just Disney movies probably that inspire me to like it. Okay, cool. So that's some MIDI effects, especially the scripter and the untapped resource that it really is. Um, cool. Well, happy to hear it, Devin. Awesome. Okay, so let me close. Do I actually need to close it? Yes, I do. I've got a prepared thing. I'm going to show you groove tracks and quantization templates next. So I'll close the session and open my groove track session. Close, don't save.
If there's an excess in harp in New Zealand music in the next couple of years, we all know where it came from.
I
It's this
accept no
session.
responsibility or liability. Um, all right. Okay. So here I've got a couple of real simple tracks, nothing too special. I've got this bass guitar being played. I've got this really boring hi-hat programmed, just the same old note every time, playing reasonably fast. And I've got this drum track here. It's just like a loop of kick and snare, I believe. I think that's all that's going on there. And so, just the kick and snare. Bass and the hat. Okay, cool. Let's stop listening to that. And so groove templates is what I wanted to show here. And so what I did was I went online and I downloaded these groove templates. These are MPC swing MIDI templates. So MPC is known for having sort of special abilities when it came to swing and shuffle. So I downloaded a whole bunch of them, but I only imported these three MIDI files, 55% swing, 65 and 75. There's all the ones in the middle, there's 56, 57, 58, so on as separate MIDI files. They're all 4 bars long, and so I imported these into the session. And so what you can do with this is, firstly, if I play this, it's just like a piano note. It's only going up so that timing can be preserved for the swing and notes don't overlap. There's no other reason for the pitch to be different. It's just a timing thing. And so what I can do is I can make this into a timing template, or quantization template. So if I break down my region here and you go to quantize up here, you can see that I've already made one from 55 here. And I can do that for 65 as well. It doesn't even need to be unmuted. I don't know why I'm unmuting it. You can go and create your own quantization templates. I can go make groove template, and now you'll see that there's a new thing in the list called 65. It takes its name from the region, importantly. So if you name the track something but region's called something random, that's what your groove template is going to be called. So rename the region, otherwise it'll be random. So now that I've done that, I can apply these groove templates to my hi-hat, for example. So let me do that. Let's apply a new quantization template to my hi-hat. I'm going to make this 55. And so all of a sudden it swings a little bit. Let's make it a bit more obvious and go 65. Cool. So we've got this MPC style swing now on the hi-hat, and that's pretty cool, but rest of the tracks aren't grooving with that swing, right? Rest are playing right down the middle, right on the beat. And so to make other tracks follow my desired quantized or swung track, there's an option in Logic called Groove Tracks. So if I right click, you got to show it up in the track header. You go to track header components, and there's an option here called Groove Track. If I click Groove Track, now it doesn't look like anything. Once again, they've done a pretty good job of hiding it. You've got to hover your mouse over the number of the track, and then this little star shows up. And the star means that this track is now the master for live real-time quantization for other tracks. And then you get to select which track you want it to follow. And see how when I click and select and deselect it, the timing is changing in the actual audio track. And same with the bass track. See, it's shifting. It's doing flex time and flex. Yeah, just flex time, not pitch. Flex timing to move things. So now if I play this, everything's going to be playing swung at 65%. No swing on these two. And back to swinging everything. It's really cool, like the way you can quickly apply quantization. You can try out quantization on various tracks really quickly without having to commit to anything, certainly without having to go into flex mode and actually move the flex markers back and forth. I think that's a great little addition. Once again, slightly hidden, and I guess that's why I'm talking about it.
Can you just do like a quick click through again of that whole process?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Now
No,
that we
no.
know what our endpoint is.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. Let me deselect that. Let's make the 75 one because it's super obvious. Let's make this one into see my skepticism? I still unmute it, you know. I know it doesn't need to be unmuted. It's not the sound that it's looking at, but I can't, you know, don't trust it. So I'm going to go to quantize menu in the regions menu. I'm going to go make new groove template. It's done it. It's called 75 up here. We can go and have a look. Yep, that's new ones being added here. I'll mute it now diligently. And so to make the groove track appear, I've got to go to the track header components and click groove track, and then now groove track star appears next to any of the tracks I want to use as my template.
So is that hi-hat track now quantized to the groove, the 75 groove?
Currently it's 65. I haven't pressed on
okay.
it. Let me go and make it 75. Ooh,
Yeah.
it's moved things quite a lot this time.
Yeah.
It's going to be very swung, and so now I can make this sort of the main quantize groove template, and rest of the tracks that I select with this tick box here will follow. So this is just a hi-hat swung and nothing else. And now I can make the drum swing with the hi-hat but not the bass. And now I can add the bass to that as well. And if I change my mind on the fly and go, okay, I actually want 55% quantization, see all the other tracks jumped and became 55% swung. A lot more subtle. So that's groove tracks. That's how you use them. So once again, if you've got a multi-track and hi-hat's a pretty good fodder for it, but like you don't even listen to this hi-hat template, but you can mute and follow it. So you can create kind of groove you want output of it with that sound, if you know what I mean. There can only be one main groove track. You can't have more than one at a time. Yeah. Cool, groove templates. So yeah, if I decided that this track is actually the more interesting one, I can make that the groove template, and everything else will groove to that. You know? This is especially useful, I think, when you use lots of different loops from different loop libraries, and there's no guarantee that those loops are like grooving the same way, right? Like you drag some loops in from a sample pack or something like that. You can really lock them up by making one of them the master for timing for everything else. And yeah, you're good. Can you use the original MPC groove template track as the groove track? Yeah, you can. I only put them here. Absolutely. I only put them here so I can show you how to make them the template. And once they're the template in here, now they're forever in my list of groove templates. So if I close the session, open up a new one, these 55, 65, 75 templates are going to be there without having to import the MIDI files. I only put them in there so you could see how I did it. That's all. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay, shall we move on to something a little bit more in depth? Okay, let me get rid of this and open a new thing. Actually, could have used the same session, but let me just open a blank one. What do I want to do? Yeah, let's make a MIDI track. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I'll tell you the idea first, and then we'll see how we can achieve it. I'm kind of contriving this idea. I don't know if it's such an actually useful idea, but just humor me for a second. Let's say I had a arpeggio on here or some kind of note thing. Let's make it an arpeggio. Let's make it an arpeggiator, and this arpeggiator is going to play. Let's make it play something like insane, like for example, from C1 onwards. Let's make these two bar long. I haven't put any instrument on it, that's why we can't hear it. Let's make it every note. Bad idea, right? Sorry, my Zoom panel is in my way and I'm trying to work around it. Ugh, where did it go? Is that enough? That's 1 octave, 2 octave, 3 octave. Oh, let's make another one on here. Sorry if you can hear my son crying. It's bedtime. Okay, so about 4 octaves worth of notes here. Of course, horrendous if I hit play here and there was an instrument, it would play every note like elbow, forearm chord. Not what we want to achieve. But what I want is on a different track, say on this track here that I'm going to create, I'm going to make that a beat. I don't know what that'll sound like. Let's audition it. Sure, this one will do. I'm going to put a EQ on this, and what I want to happen is for this filter frequency here, to wiggle up and down, move around according to the notes that I've arpeggiated from this instrument one here. So I'll just loop that up. It's a weird idea, but essentially I want to apply an LFO to this audio track, this plugin, and this parameter here. I want to apply some kind of low frequency oscillation, maybe a random one. I want to jump around randomly all over the place. How could I achieve it? Well, let me first start by putting an arpeggiator on this. Oops, I already did that. Arpeggiator on this track. 16th note up, let's make it up and down, and let's make it up and down. Second variation doesn't repeat the bottom and top notes, so it just plays it once and keeps going up and down. All right, so that's there. A way of applying that type of a translation where I want a MIDI signal to be transformed to another kind of MIDI signal, but the internal one that logic understands, you can do that through a device called a transformer, and you can do that in the MIDI environment. So way before logic was clever enough to give us these awesome MIDI effects, all these MIDI effects were available, but they were available in what's called the MIDI environment, so that they're under the hood bit of logic. And so to access that, you press Command 0, and this other window pops up. Just confirming that you can see this other window. I don't need to share another screen. No, you can't see it. Stupid logic. Okay, so let me share my entire screen. My desktop screen. All right, you can see it now. Yeah, so this new environment window pops up. You can close it. It's a separate floating window. You can't put it in a pane like all the other things that you can in Logic. So Command 0 and it pops up this environment. See, it's got this old school like Logic 8 look to it. They haven't updated the view of it in a long time. And what we see here is this, the organ beat. That's this big whole organ beat. That's that drum loop that I put on here. We can also see this instrument 1. That's that instrument with a ton of notes on it and an arpeggiator. There's a little preview thing here. The click track actually is an instrument, Klopfgeist, that does the tick, 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 tick sound when you record. You see the stereo out in the master fader. And you also notice that each of these tracks has a little triangle out here. And this triangle is actually a virtual cable. You can grab it and it looks like a TRS jack. You can grab it and move it around and plug it into other things. So in a new menu, I'm going to select a thing called the monitor. And if the monitor just tells us what MIDI information is coming out of anything. And if I plug in to the monitor the output of this instrument that's got a bunch of those notes on it, and then I hit play. Oops, I should probably mute my organ just for a second. What we can see is a bunch of notes. It's not exactly arpeggiated, so it's not like it's moving up and down. So let's check the ARP here, and why doesn't it like it? Does it not like it because there's not a region on it? Every time it flicks over, it creates a new thing. Yeah, all right. Why don't you like it? Let me think about that for a second. It should really play. There's a region. There's no instrument, but why does that matter? Let me put an instrument on here. And I'm gonna promptly mute it because we don't want to hear it. Go back to the environment. No, of course not. It doesn't matter if there's an instrument there or not. Let me just reset it. It should 100% be arpeggiating. Sorry. Arpeggiator. Oh, this is making me look bad. Why is it not playing the arpeggio? Even if I latch it, it doesn't play it? That's so weird. Why not? Too many notes? Can't be. Can't be. I've done this a million times before. Okay. All right. Change of plan. Well, I didn't actually save a little project file for it because like I thought I would do it from scratch. Let me just restart this whole thing. Sometimes, every now and again, there might be a bug. Software instrument. Let's do it. Let's select a sound just to confirm. Arpeggiator. Make a new region. Make it 4 bars. Put in a note. Okay, it's going fine now. Whatever.
Classic.
Why did it not work a minute ago? What's your problem? Okay, I'm going to disable the sampler, making sure, yeah, arpeggiating fine. So I'm going to bypass it for now. So there's not too many things going on at the same time since it's so fragile. Go up and maybe one more time. Oh, fuck, stop doing it. Oh, I bypassed it, of course. Okay. So for whatever reason it didn't work before, it's working now. So definitely arpeggiating, yes. Go to my environment, create a new monitor, and extend the output of this music box track, which has the ARP on it, into the monitor, and play it. And the ARP is ARPing. The monitor is not showing. That's so weird. Why are you doing that to me now? I like showed everyone it works. Like, look at this cool thing I made. So we should be seeing notes actually arpeggiating, like going up and down. I can't think of why it's not doing it, if I'm honest. Let's sit on this for a second. What could it be? ARP into monitor. Well, we're in playback mode. It's looping. Arpeggiator is arpeggiating. Let's make it go up and down just to confirm. Yeah, it's doing everything. Oh, anything helpful in the chat? Yeah, I did just put the MIDI record on, but I don't usually have to. Reset this. So when it comes around, yeah, it just dumps it one time and goes away. Okay, let's do it a different way. Let's do it a slightly different way. Instead of it being notes, what could we? I mean, that's like the whole point of the demo, that we can make notes into fader information, translate notes into fader. So I really did need these notes moving. So maybe instead of doing it this way with an ARP, I'll just program some notes in to move. So I'll make like this one that's shorter, just quick and dirty. You know what's gonna happen, right? I'm gonna hang up this call and go, oh, of course, this is why I didn't. Bloody hell. But we'll put some notes in here, and let's see if this is now moving. Yeah, so we're getting a few notes here that are moving and looping. And so the monitor here tells us 4 bits of information. It tells us what kind of signal this is, and this little crotchet here, this little note, tells us that it's a note on signal. Then it tells us what channel it's on, so it's on channel 1, then the note value, and then the velocity, right? So that's the info that it tells us. If I create a new thing called transformers down here. This transformer has a little interface. So if I plug the output of these notes into the transformer has this interface. And this interface really shows you the anatomy of a MIDI file. It has a status byte, it has a channel, 3-bit channel allocation, and then 2 data bytes. And so if I say all things that equal to note now must be fixed to be fader, now I can make notes into faders, but I don't know which fader channel or values I actually need. So to make that appear, and I didn't put like a new track that I want to actually edit or effect on. So let me just do that. Some drum track. That means something normal. Sure. Normal enough. All right, and we'll put we'll put this EQ on it, enable the filter, and so this is the parameter I want adjusted. So I'll bring back my environment window, and so if I take a monitor, another monitor, create one more here, move this up, new monitor, and now extend the output of this track, which is the one with the EQ on it, the drum track, and then move this, wiggle this about. I can see that, okay, that's fader on channel number 2, it's control change number 29, and these are the values that actually cause a change, right? And so I can go back to my transformer and I say everything that equals to note must be fixed as fader. Everything that's on channel 1, because that was channel 1, remember, that's now going to be on channel fixed to 2. So now we got fader and we've got 2. And now what I want is, well, the pitches here change. That's the change. And I want that to be applied to the last second data byte here. So I'm going to say all things that are pitches, they can go to be fixed control number 29, because that's 29 here. And all things that are velocities, I actually want the velocity thing to not really do anything. That's not the final byte here. I want that to be fed from the pitch. And so it's got this tap function where I've tapped the output of the pitch into the second data byte to make this thing active. And so if I delete this this cable now and take the output of my transformer and plug it into here, take the output of my music notes that I put in and put it in there and hit play, I'm getting some fader 2 information on 29, and things are being changed here, but only slightly, right? Because I did it like within an octave, so it's not really affecting it that much. That's why I had like a stack of notes, so like it goes through the whole octaves, whole range here. But the idea is the same, that every note has become fader, every channel 1 has become channel 2, every note is now changing the last data byte of the thing. And so let me, I didn't even patch it back in, sorry. Output of that has to be patched in. It'll move a little bit now. Yeah, there we go. It's moving slightly. And so we get this movement now. It's kind of like a dumb example, because like, where would you ever want that? Or like, can you just do it some other way? Granted, I take your point, but I just wanted to show you transformer. And so now let's do something that's maybe a little bit more realistic with this environment business. So I'm going to delete everything here. And yeah, thank you, Devin. Yeah, I realized that a little bit late. Yeah. So while there's a really useful function in the MIDI effects called the modulator gives you a 1 LFO that can be any shape you like. It can be even, you know, asymmetric like this. Very cool, useful tool. You can change the rate of how fast this LFO goes. I'm sure you know all about this, the output amount, or you can offset it, you know, like a little bit of amount, but up there. It's super usable and very handy to have, but it will only work on the channel strip that you put it on. So on all these effects, you can do cool things like, say, take this tremolo, for example, and say depth is what I want to modulate with this shape. You can go to learn MIDI parameter and then click on depth, and there it goes, modulating that that MIDI parameter. So super useful. And so yeah, you know, you can do all the stuff that we just talked about. But you can't do this in audio. You can't ever apply a modulator to audio because it's a MIDI effect, and so it lives on a MIDI track. It doesn't live on an audio track, so you can never affect anything audio through it. But do you see where I'm going with this? You can use that MIDI environment to essentially apply any old movement, as long as it's a control change, as long as it can be a CC, continuous controller, you can apply it to anything you want. There's a couple of tricks to it that you've got to make sure you do beforehand. So let me just reset this channel strip, or actually just delete it altogether. And yeah, we'll keep this beat for what it's worth up here and create a new track that's going to be our MIDI track. Logic has another sort of often forgotten instrument in the instrument list. Down here under utility, you've got an instrument called external instrument. An external instrument, doesn't matter if you make it MIDI or mono or stereo, the external instrument simply acts as if it's a external synth or an external MIDI instrument. But MIDI destination can be Logic's internal Apple codec IAC driver. Do you guys know about this IAC driver? It's something that's enabled in the audio MIDI setup. I think I'm sharing my entire screen, so if I go to my audio MIDI setup, it opens the screen on which there's like all the devices that I've ever had plugged into this computer, and you can see that IC driver is active. If it's not on yours, you double click on it and you make sure the device is online is ticked, and it's Apple's way of internally routing MIDI inside the computer. You know, it's like a virtual MIDI cable for inside the computer. So you make sure that's active, you quit out of there, and then IAC shows up in your MIDI routing in any software that you have, including like iPads and iOS stuff. It's all ISC drivers. And so if I make the MIDI destination ISC driver, now whatever happens on this channel, on this MIDI channel, is going to be put out as a control change, as a internal MIDI information. So now if I put modulator on this track here, and it's doing its modulating, currently it's assigned to controller change 1, CC1, but let's go into these upper ones. Let's go 110. These are unused, you know, they're not usually associated with any specific parameter of a synth. So we can make it 110 and close this. Off it goes. It's doing this freewheeling thing. Once again, if we go to the environment and instrument 1 is selected, get the monitor just to make sure that things are happening. Instrument 1 into the monitor, and here we go. This little fader symbol here tells you that it's a continuous controller, CC. It's on channel 1, it's on CC number 110. That's what we put on, and then it's, you know, going full gamut, right, from 0 to 127 and back, up and down. And so the idea from then on is fairly simple. Let's say we want to apply it to this I don't know, let's get something else a bit more interesting than just that EQ. Maybe the step effects under multi-effects, this thing, and let me disable everything except this filter right here. So if I play this thing, say I want to affect this parameter with my modulator, which is on a MIDI track, and this is an audio track, so I can't have modulator on this track. All I do is once more open up MIDI environment and wiggle that parameter into a new monitor so I can see what it is. So new monitor, wherever it put it here, take the step effects output, plug it into the monitor, wiggle this about. It's fader number 2. By the way, first preset is always channel number 2. That's how Logic accounts for it. Second preset is number 3, and so on. I don't know why. Fader number 2 on 5, and then that's the values, right? So we do the same thing. We create a new transformer. Double click on the transform. Well, first, let's not forget to patch the input correctly into here, like so. Double click on it, and say everything that is, what was it? Everything that equals, not note this time, but control, because that was fader, you know, it's control change information. Control, make that into fader, right? That F, make that into fader. And everything that was on 1, that equals 1, now is going to be 2. And then this the second data byte, or rather the first data byte, sorry, is it's destined to be 5, so it needs to equal 5, but it starts life as 110. So we can go everything that equals 110 needs to now equal 5, and then pass the information through. I don't want anything else to happen. Just all second data bytes just get applied straight away. And so now if I think that's right. Now if I patch this output back, don't want to be got by the same thing again. If I patch this back into step effects, now we should see some movement. Make sure. Yep, step effects is 5. Let's see the output of this transformer. Put another monitor down. Let's see what it's actually transforming into. So everything that's control is now fader, 1 is now 2, 110 is now 5, and modulator's modulating. And here we go, the cutoff frequency is going nuts. And so this is in time with the BPM, which helps. And of course you can make it anything you like, right? Okay, and so on. So yeah, this way we can use any MIDI effect essentially on any parameter on any other track, any audio track or anything you want. It's a little bit roundabout, but if you follow the process, it's actually not too bad. Sometimes it wigs out and doesn't do exactly what you think it should be doing, but if you persevere with it, it works most of the time. So the trick to it, the essential trick, was to instantiate a external instrument, this little plugin here, and assign it to ISE driver. After that, it's smooth sailing, you know. Okay, since we're talking the environment, let me do the synth demo thing. So I've got this synth here, the only one that's turned on. It's my Waldorf Plus. This is my Waldorf rack. They're all my 90s Waldorf German synthesizers. I just liked them a lot when I was younger, so I kept buying them. I've got the Blofeld here. I've probably seen this. This is their more sort of, I don't know, 15-year-old offering, but those ones are old. So the top one is called the Pulse Plus. It's like a 3 oscillator analog, fully analog synthesizer, analog oscillators and filters, etc. 24 dB per octave, transistor ladder filters, just a nice synth. And so that that synth doesn't have any USB input or anything. It's just got like 5-pin DIN MIDI. And what I'm using is this like cable that's USB on one end, and then 2 MIDI old school DIN 5-pin DIN MIDIs on the other end, and that's my MIDI interface, right, for this purpose of this video. And so you can see the notes when it receives notes. It'll light up a MIDI input light. So let me delete all this junk and create an external MIDI, and that interface is called USB MIDI interface, imaginatively. And so I'll go create, and that now is my synth, right? So if I play, you can see that light lighting up a little bit faintly in the background. When I play a note, it lights up, so it's receiving MIDI data, you know, and then back there, I realize it's a little bit far away, but we don't need to see it. Okay, so cool. If I play a key, you know, it triggers. Then I could have the analog output of it routed back into my inputs here on my console, and we could hear it if we really wanted to. I think I can make that happen if I make a couple of audio stereo inputs here, and no, but I can hear myself too that way. I think just to confirm. You hear that? So that's the synth. Is it too quiet? That's all right. So let me just turn off my monitoring here, otherwise it's really odd when I can hear myself. Okay, so yeah, so it plays, it responds. I've got a line coming in just so we can confirm that we can hear it. That's great, but can I control any of the MIDI parameters? Like, let's say I wanted to control the cutoff frequency on that synth. Like, do I have to get up and walk over there and turn a dial? Well, you know, ideally, but I don't actually. I can actually do it from. I mean, the whole idea of hardware synth is you get your hands dirty, and it's a tactile thing. But I can actually control all that stuff with MIDI, and I can do that through the environment. So if I recall my environment with Command 0 one more time, this layer that we're on, these are called environment layers. This layer that we're on is called the mixer layer up here. I can change to instrument layer, and currently there's no instruments registered. So I'm going to start a new instrument, and it's going to be this one here, and I can even rename it, not that we need to, but let's just call it Pulse. So this pulse is receiving currently on all MIDI ports. I want it to be a little bit more discerning than that, so just USB MIDI interface, please, is where it's going to receive, and it's going to receive on all channels. I'll just leave it like that. And so this has an output as well, so you know you can patch it into other things. That's not an audio output, that's a MIDI output. And I don't know if you noticed before, but in this put menu there's fader. Submenu, and so I can go down to one of the knobs here, this knob for example, knob number 6, and if I take output of this knob and patch it into my input, currently it's control number 7. See what happens when I change the dial on my little synth in the background there. A little light comes on. So this is actually sending control change information to the synthesizer. Right, and so I'll close this for the moment, and let's put some kind of MIDI on this so it keeps playing. Yeah, let's hear it fine. Just so that there's something there. Command A, quantize, get out of here, get out of here. Okay, sweet. So I'm going to bring this up again, and so now if I turn this volume down, we don't hear it. And as I bring it up, we hear it, right? So now we're changing just control number 7, which is main volume. That allows us to, it's just Q, the hotkey for quantizing for Devon. It's just letter Q on the keyboard. So now we're sort of distance controlling our synthesizer with this knob. Cool, wonderful. Now I've had that synth for a while, so I've spent some time on it, and I decided to make a little editor for it. And environment allows you to import and export layers, just the layers themselves. So I'm going to import a layer. So I'm going to go import environment layer, and I'm going to find my pulse layer, and I'm going to open it. And it asks me what objects do I want to bring in here. I want to just bring in the MIDI instrument layer. Here's my synth editor. So now this is the oscillator section, tunes, fine tunes, shapes of oscillators, pulse width on the first two oscillators, key track, sync on the second oscillator, level of the three oscillators, noise level. That's the filter, key track, envelope, sensitivity, etc. So if I play that horrible thing that I just played, oh, I deleted shit. Undo, undo. Import layer, sorry. Like so. Whoa, everything selected. Sorry, sorry. No, that's a bad idea. Can you hear the synth? Or is it just me? Oh, you can't hear it? Oh, damn it. Pulse. I've got it plugged in straight into the interface so I can hear it. Why can't you hear it? One, two, one, two. Nope, that's just me. Where'd it go? You can see it's flashing. It's definitely receiving the MIDI data, but where did it go? Yeah, looks fine. I don't know. See, joys of blending the new with the old. Why did it disappear? Oh, it's so annoying that I can hear it and you guys can't. Anyway, let's imagine that we can hear it. I don't want to spend too much time troubleshooting this. The point is that this environment layer, which I just imported like for the third time, is now connecting that synthesizer, controlling that synthesizer. And the way that this is just like I just went put new knob, and then patched everything through the monitor into the pulse, into the synthesizer instrument that I created before. And how I knew what each of these, controls, see, like this one's control number 36 and this one's controller number 32 and so on, and the cutoff frequency is controller number 50 and etc. How I knew that was I just went to the manual for the synth, this manual here, and right at the bottom somewhere there's a list of all the CC numbers that the synth responds to, and the parameter that that CC number will change. So right there, all the way from oscillator tunes to oscillator semitones, fine tunes, and it tells you, right? So oscillators 2 pulse width modulation receives on controller number 13, and its ranges from 0 to 127. So I just put all that stuff in there, data entry the hell out of it, and once you do it one time you get to save it, and anytime you want to use that synth in your production you call up that layer, and without leaving your seat you can sort of program a new sound, you know. Could you plug the output of the synth into a monitor and twiddle the knobs? Yes, yes, you can. Yeah, you can do it that way as well, precisely. It's just that that thing's got like 5 knobs on it, you know? So it's menu driven, so you got to go through the menus. And then I think you would still get the right CC number for it, but I'm not too sure. I think those 5 knobs are just set CC, so they do output. You are correct. They do output MIDI as well. Yeah, it's got a MIDI out on the back. Yeah, precisely. Okay, so I think we're sort of starting to run out of time. So let me just show you one more thing that I think is pretty cool, and then I'll take a few questions, and yeah, we'll start from there. Um, oh, see, logic crashed. Typical. Well, at least it crashed when we weren't doing anything.
It's not just Pro Tools. Yay.
Yeah.
Logic does it too.
No, it totally does it. It does it too often. Um, yeah, that's a good question. Not really is the short answer, Dave. It doesn't recall patches because every time you import the layer, it imports at its default positions. All the dials are in their default. Once you touch that dial, jumps the it jumps the parameter to that position. So it doesn't quite work, unfortunately, like that. That would be cool, though. Now you can actually save sysx data. There's a little bit more work to it than that, though. You essentially have to save it as a text file and have to convert it. I bet the scripter could do it. Okay, so what's my final thing here? Right. Sharing the screen one more time.
Could you also, with there's just the other question, could you save a layer as a preset?
How do you mean as a preset? Sorry, I missed that question.
Good.
You can save a layer as a file, and then you can call up that file anytime you want, and you can save multiple files for multiple presets, not synth parameter preset. No, you can't do that. No. Yeah, every time you call it up, all the knobs are in the center. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but no, you can't do that. All right, so I've got the good old blank session here. I'm gonna find a specific drum beat because I tried it on that beat and it was kind of cool. So this beat 01, Atomic Garage beat 01, its default tempo is 125, so it inherits that tempo. This is not very tricky, it's just like a little cool effect that I discovered when messing about with Space Designer. So Space Designer, as you may know, is a convolution reverb that is stock with comes with Logic. Space Designer, it looks like this. And what's the idea of convolution reverb? So it takes an audio file and then deconvolves it, or unmultiplies it, I suppose divides it, into, and takes away the sound itself and just leaves the behavior of the sound of the file. It's a little tricky to explain, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you can look it up. But if you wanted to capture a natural reverb of an actual acoustic space, like say you go into like a car park or somewhere, a cave or something that sounds interesting, you could do a sine sweep, like from the lowest frequency, 20 hertz, to all the way to the highest in a very short amount of time, go like whoop, like that, and then record the tail and tail of the reverb or the behavior of that space as a file. And then you can bring that audio file and you can dump it onto this main window of Space Designer, and then essentially apply that cave reverb to any instrument or any sound that you've got in Logic, right? So it's called convolution. Convolution is like a fancy word for multiplication, mathematically speaking. So it like multiplies every sample of your actual track by every sample of the reverb track, and that's kind of how it manages to do this. But so we've got this. Let me disable this. In fact, I don't want it on here at all. We've got this drum beat here. I'll play it for a sec. Cool. So I'm going to create a send here, send on bus 1, and I'm going to put my my Space Designer on here. Now I've learned through experience that it's best to actually put it on the second slot and on the first slot to put like a filter filter that's a high pass, quite a healthy amount of high pass, in fact. So I'm going to put like high pass all the way up to like 200 or 250 or something like that. That will become obvious why in a second. So I'm going to take my delay designer, and instead of using, space designer, and instead of using space designer reverb convolution waveforms, I'm going to take this very track and make that into reverb. So the actual drum beat that I want to put reverb on, I'm using as a reverb. So any predictions on what that sounds like? It's going to sound weird, number one. It's going to sound interesting, number two. That's why I like it. But essentially what's going to happen is every sample is going to be multiplied by itself, but also delayed and smeared in time a little bit. So you get this neither reverb nor delay, kind of haunting sounding weird thing. Now, the reason I put this massive high pass on this is because the bottom end just builds on itself and feeds back and just goes whoop, 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 and just gets out of hand really quickly. So you need to have that there. And so let's check it out. There's no send being turned up just yet, but I'll just play the dry and I'll start adding the send. Without it, sorry, it takes a while for it to go away. Here we go. So you're hearing the 4-second tail end of the actual thing. That's cool enough, but it's probably not as interesting. I'm going to also reduce the low frequency spread. This low spread makes the bass stereo and it's too weird. So I mono up the bass below 710, not quite bass, but you know. But it's got this pre-delay, and with this pre-delay you can sync it to the BPM, and if you move this about, then you get kind of interesting effects again. So let's set it to an 8th note. That's a bit of a groove. If you set it to longer, it gets to be more interesting. If you change the size, weird things start to happen. So size here is like this size in seconds, but it's expressed as the percentage value. And so changing the size here, see, it rescales the file. It's like doing a lot of math as I'm fucking around with this dial. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Messing around with this dial. It's changing the length, like it's stretching and compressing that file. So like doing crazy math, but like real weird things happen to this. Firstly, it speeds it up, and because it's a percentage value and it doesn't relate to the BPM in any way, it comes out of kilter really easily, right? Out of time. And you can of course go low. Just get these really off-kilter rhythms that, you know, I could never think of without, you know, technology helping out, and like something you can't really get through like a normal delay. I've got another beat that I tried it with, just at a different BPM. Ending beat. 5. Same idea. I'm actually going to move it up here because I'm lazy to create another send. Drag this down. Does its fancy processing. Let's just make sure we're good here. I'm going to kill this low spread. This is still on. Like, how cool is that little groove? Without it, and then mess around with this pre-delay. It takes 11 seconds. It's like a 4-bar loop, so it takes ages for it to play out. See what I mean about the low frequencies? It needs even higher. Even higher high pass here. Calculating. Did I push my luck? Ended up too high. 560. Didn't quite like that. The fact that it has to do math on the fly, I think it likes very much. But like, yeah, once again, like no editing required, you know, without much of an effort, you can get some quite interesting. It's still going because it's 19.7 seconds long, so you gotta wait 20 seconds for it to go away. Yeah, it can get these interesting textural things that like you can't. I don't think you can achieve it with anything else. It doesn't work as well on instruments, maybe on some percussive things, like certainly doesn't work on bass all that well. It has to be harmonically rich, it has to be in the sort of mid to high register, and if it's percussive and rhythmic, then you get these textures. I've tried it on lots of things, to the dismay of my wife, who had to sit through it while I was going, check this out, this is so cool. She was like, is it? Without it, it's like some kind of ghostly echo. It's combining the Zoom glitching. Nice. All right. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here and stop. I had like a few more things on my list, but nah, these were the most important ones I wanted to show and play around. And sorry when the technology wasn't playing ball, but hopefully you got something out of it. Yeah, let's open it up for questions or comments or anything you'd like to say, because I've been doing all the talking up till now.
I just think that was great. So many like cool little bits and pieces and like really inspiring as well to kind of get all these different musical ideas in these sort of different ways, especially all that MIDI stuff was awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so useful, and yeah, like I was saying, it was difficult for me to come up with like a plan for this thing initially. Thinking like, oh, do we concentrate on one thing or do we do bits and pieces? Is bits and pieces going to be too random? But yeah, I think I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, there was something useful in there for you guys.
Did anybody else have any questions? Oh,
No
cool.
questions, but yeah, that was really cool, man. Like just going from the start of just showing us some basic things and just like scoping underneath the hood, like you said, and then going into the deep dive, which was like, the bit more intensive. It wasn't all that. So it was like real cool to get like different levels of what you can get out of Logic.
Yeah,
So yeah,
nice.
thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks. That was kind of inspiring. I think I'm going to be
Oh,
playing around
nice.
for quite a while now.
Yeah, I think me too, I just don't get the opportunity. I think I'll start making music or something.
Ooh. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, David. And also, I forgot to at the start thank the Music Commission who's funding this for us.
Yes.
Really great to yeah, be able to have you on here and do this, and hopefully we can do more things like this in future because I feel like we've all just had a great little fun nerd out session this evening, which is awesome. For everyone on here, we will send you through just like a little survey just to like get your feedback on bits and pieces. Like I've had a great session, but it'll be great for us to know for future as well, and also to like be able to tell our funders about like what everyone thought of it. But yeah, thank you so much, David. That was awesome. Really, really
My
cool.
pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I had a blast.